So with face-to-face, let's get a little more practical. I know I'm somebody that you explain only so much, and just give me some examples. So let me think out loud. This is just off the cuff. So this kind of stuff happens inherently without being scripted. You're in a situation where a patient walks into a room. How do you handle it? That's a good question. Immediately what you have to do is you have to seem natural, you have to greet the patient, you have to hold their gaze, and then you want to talk about stuff. So really when somebody comes in, you need to greet the person. I mean, it sounds trite to talk about you need to greet the person. That usually involves some kind of a touch appropriately to the person, shake hand, touch shoulder, touch elbow, whatever works with you. But usually walking into a room, you've got to get on a level where you can relate to the patient. So when a patient's sitting, if the patient is seated, let's look at it this way, for those hygienists, assistants, anybody that interfaces with the patient in the operatory, walking in, you have to greet the patient. And greeting the patient is immediately when you walk in the room has got to be something upbeat. Being face-to-face in this situation, you need to start the ball. The ball has to start with you. So when you go in, it would be something like, you have to know her name, obviously his name. You have to know something about them ahead of time. This doesn't just automatically happen because it's not natural to look natural. The way you're going to look natural in a setting like this with 60 interfaces every day is you're not ever going to really remember what your last conversation was. Even for the people that you've had long-term relationships with, it's a little bit easier. Those are easier because you've already established a real relationship with some of these people. Albeit some of the relationships might be, I can't wait to be done with Mrs. Smith. But let's talk about this more pragmatically. Everybody that you interface has got to be positive, upbeat, make an immediate connection, take the ball, and then hand it off a little bit. So how would you do that? So you have to be prepared. You got to know something about Mary. You got to know something about like her husband, what his name is, what the jobs are, what the kids, what you talked about last time. This sounds like, well, how do you know that? Well, you got to have that in your notes on the patient. You have to be prepared to come in. Coming in cold is difficult, but you still can do it. So being prepared to come in, you're going to have, and the interfaces are very interesting. And I was thinking about this before we recorded today. And actually my last clinical day I had yesterday, and I was thinking, well, what do I do? You know, what do I really do every time I come in? And it became obvious when I started to track in my mind a lot of these interfaces. I walk in, I immediately say something, Mary, how you doing? Great to see you. Walk in, sit down and get at their level. Don't stand over them. If you have an opportunity to sit down, knee to knee, eye to eye, relaxed, not like this. For you dentists who have bad shoulders, I know you want to do this, but at least get a little more relaxed. Mary, how you doing? And interestingly enough, the patient will always respond when you're looking at them because then they'll respond back to you. Bear with me, I know we're kind of breaking this down, but you have to break these things down. The conversation when it's left hanging, and let's talk about the people that maybe you don't know. Maybe you walk in, you don't know anything about, or you don't remember, you're busy, you walk in. How do you deal with those face-to-face situations and turn them around? The conversations become pretty generic. And almost every, especially in Canada, something comes out about the weather. I don't know why, I can't stand the weather. I know they're always wrong, but we always talk about the weather. I don't know if that's like everywhere else, but I think it is. So when you talk with Mary, you got to say, Mary, how's things? Tell me, how are you? You know, how's life? How's things? Open-ended questions that set the stage that you're interested in them, even generically. Then when you get into more specific conversations about what they've been doing, how's your summer going? How's your fall going? How's your winter going? And inherently, once that is put out, it'll talk something about the weather. Now here's something very interesting, is weather's a weird topic. But I gotta tell you, I talked about the weather almost with every patient because either they talk about when a lull exists, how do you feel the lull? God, it's been hot. That's what a patient will say, oh, I can't stand the heat. I can't stand the humidity. Somebody else will say, it's been too cold. We want the heat. So what you need to do is bounce something out there. Isn't it beautiful? You know, isn't it great we're having rain? God, the gardens look amazing. I mean, anything that something comes out, weather's weird because weather inherently always wants to go to a negative vein. Everybody loves the negativity of weather. I don't know why. I think it's the first barrier that people can talk to anybody about. It's that innate, seemingly inane conversation that leads nowhere, but bring it somewhere. Then start talking about the weather. Start talking about something real positive, just to kind of get that positive energy flowing. Now, obviously, then if you don't know anything about it, tell me about you. How's your job? What do you do, Mary, anyway? You know, and it's okay if you don't know, so then turn it into a very interesting question. Mary, what do you do, Mary? What job do you have? So, and the tone has a lot to do with it instead of saying, Mary, I don't know what you do. You know, and then you start to pick out pieces that Mary or Fred, or here's an interesting thing, also a child will want to talk about. Because how easy is it to go in there and not talk to a child? For crying out loud, they're the future of your practice. They're going to bring the whole family in, from grandparents to parents. Don't look at little Johnny like, okay, the parent's not here, let's get to work. Mary, can you bring my forceps? And the kid is sitting there, and you think he's not paying attention. Oh my goodness. Do you remember when you were a child? You remember everything around you. You're in a scary place. Get down and talk with the child so they can understand you. If you're not a parent, great. Go back to when you were a child. Find something, you know, and relate with them. You know, it's not hard to do, but there's ways to do this. We'll give you some examples of this in some of the video stuff, but do it in your own way. It's a very, very important interface that happens. It's kind of like an interlaced puzzle. And what we need to do is the puzzle will be different in every situation, but you got to get into that flow. That flow takes effort. You connect a lot of these pieces together, but you're constantly gauging the feedback from your patient. So as the patient, you know, back and forth, and it's an interesting thing, you're not always trying to move them into this superstar situation where you're hugging and you're laughing and you're talking. To move somebody that's inherently very quiet, very private, maybe in a real negative mode, you might move them a little bit. And on the surface, you might think, God, I didn't do well. How many times do you move a patient that you think for a long period of time says they just don't want to relate? So you do the same stuff, you stick on it with effort. These are a lot of effort. You keep positive, even though you're getting this feedback that just about hits you in the head. Oh, you know, that you just think, I don't want to be here. Don't ever say that. But what happens is, it's really interesting. These patients are moved probably as much as they've ever been moved in their negative world, in their negative day, but don't judge them. You don't know what's really going on. And they still come back and look at you like they never want to see somebody else. And you're going, I thought I wasn't even connecting. So it's interesting how you take these little pieces and let them go. And I also want to give you another thing. This isn't something that you're going to spend an hour doing. It's not possible. That's not why we're there. That's not why they're there. We're there to get in, start that connection, take the ball, get it going in a positive way. Look for moments where you can feed that thing in with little breaks, with understanding and eye contact. And then what you're there to do is find a time that you can get back to tie it into their health, to tie it into their teeth, and then away you go. Here's another tip, and this works amazingly well when you've got a team. And if you've got a, I'll use Marnie as an example. She's my assistant for almost 30 years. She's unbelievable face-to-face. It's like her primary strength. You let her go, she'll know everybody in the room. She'll find out that she knows somebody that she grew up with and their grandparents went to school with her. I just let Marnie go. But what happens is in the face-to-face, it's so effortless with Marnie because she cares. She loves people. She loves to gossip. She loves to know the stuff. So when you can get into a three-way face-to-face, wow, it's magic. Because then the patient's there, and then I say something, and then Marnie feeds in. And we don't think about this, but what happens is that's a real magical time, because now the patient's thinking, I love this place. I walked in the front, great on the phone, walks in the operatory, it's not about Bob. Can't wait when I leave. Because here's the magic in this. When I leave, which I'm going to leave because I got other things to do, Marnie's there. The patient, I could be gone for 20 minutes because I'm handling this and they don't know why. I come back in and it's almost like I'm interrupting their party. I'm thinking, oh my God, the patient's going to have been 20 minutes because I dealt with an emergency that I wasn't really clear on what I was going to do, and I had to spend this time. And instead of almost making an excuse while I'm gone, they're almost looking at me. They don't want to interrupt their conversation interrupted with Marnie. It's such a great feeling in terms of that relationship that's there. Then dentistry follows. But I got to tell you, this face-to-face sets the stage for all the other stuff that we need to do to give the great quality, to give them why they're there. And they're not there to form a relationship with you. They're there to get dentistry done. So the face-to-face becomes just the thing on top that solidifies the relationship, that will keep them loyal. And when they leave that office, how did you make them feel? How did you make them feel? They don't even know how you made them feel, because a lot of it's authentic anyway. I like people. Well, I like people, you know, in small bite-sized chunks, let's be honest. But the very nature of fact, what I like in this is not so much that I enjoy the face-to-face contact, I enjoy the response. I enjoy moving somebody further up their positive meter. And then it sets the stage for when you really get down and talk to them and continue your clinical discussion. This is an important thing for a lot of you dentists out there that want to get into clinical mode. When you take a face-to-face interface, and then when you start to talk about, Mary, how's your health? How you been feeling? We talked about your diabetes before and what we need to do. And you know that tooth? Yeah. So whenever you start to get into it, continue with the same set of interest, the same set of focus that you carry through with the initial face-to-face. Now you have that face-to-face focus in a clinical setting. That's important because now you've breached through the first impression, the nice interface, but then you get through and you continue that same caring, trusting, interested demeanor even with your assistant, and now we're going to apply that to what you're here for, which is the treatment. So when you carry that through, that you're concerned about, are you okay? How are you feeling? We're going to do this now. Explain everything. Explain it with a voice of compassion. Explain it with the fact that you're going to be there to protect where they are in terms of their comfort. You're going to let them know what you're doing. That's why you're talking the whole time. But it becomes seamless in the whole thing. From even the time they leave the appointment, there's going to be obviously times when you really focus, when you're in your loop world, when you're looking and you're in your dental world, and then you're still interfacing a little bit, but the patient doesn't always want you to be doing this. Believe me, when you're doing something critical, they love the fact that you're there and then you go quiet and focus and they see this wonderful exchanging occurring and efficiencies and tools being passed and they're going, wow, not only are they nice, they're in sync. And they must be doing a great job. And you tell them we're going to take photographs and this looks great and here's what I'm doing. Going into your clinical world and being quiet, pulling out the right time, saying, Mary, you still doing well? I know I'm in tooth world here. I hope you're doing great still. You're going to feel, so you have those touches along the way within the hour of the appointment. Very, very important. And at the end of the day, you're always looking to support them and your assistant gets involved with it. She doesn't talk over you, but she's looking to do her job, which is to keep, the airway clear, to keep the suction going, to really interface with Mary, but not too, it's still a clinical procedure and that's why they're there. Now you've got face-to-face, which is carried right through, not just in the nice meet and greet, fine, that's what you need to do, but also the face-to-face is occurring under the radar. Not just what you say, but they're perceiving what's happening around them. That's face-to-face as well. They're seeing visually, they're seeing what's happening. So it has to be a seamless transition, and that takes effort. And with a lot of people, it takes training, but you can do it. I'll use a story, and I'll use a story that's really good. And I won't use the guy's name because I really like him, but he's the first specialist. No, he's not the first. Well, he's one of the first specialists we brought into the practice. He's a great guy. He's a young guy, was keen to learn, really was a good operator. He's a periodontist. I don't know how you can be a great periodontist, but people don't like you. But what happens is he was treating the condition. He'd walk in, and I walked by the operatory one of the first days he's there. He walks in, I was behind him, he walked into the room, he went right to the monitor to look at the patient's radiographs, and he's talking to the patient. And the patient's facing the other way, and he's actually talking to the patient. He's a nice guy. Well, then he finally sat down, here's what he did. He hadn't even met the patient yet. I used it as an opportunity because it was a very quick consult came on, and I said, doctor, I didn't say doctor, I said his first name. In respect to the privacy, I won't tell you who it was, I said, sit in the chair. So I walked in and did what he did. I said, how was that? You know what he said to me? He said, that was great. I said, you're an idiot, because it wasn't great. You're not a patient, you're a doctor. That's intimidating. They're hearing this clinical conversation from this guy who's a periodontist behind. Think about that. Well, you can get away with it. And is any specialist looking at this? You're probably the worst people for doing this. You get away with it because you can, not because you should. Now, if you overlay some compassion, some face-to-face, carry it through, we're all just doing stuff. So it's a really interesting thing. And again, I'll go back to what we talked about before. Step outside and try and look at what you're doing. Even in your mind's eye, how's that patient perceiving what I'm doing? Now's a good place to do this. So you're always in touch with what's being perceived on the surface and face-to-face, no matter what you do.